Death lurks around every corner. Death is extremely random. Death is not your friend. I have officiated at over 1,000 funerals in my lifetime, ranging in age from 3 months old to 100 years old. And no matter the age, this is what I learned: death is final. When you look down in the casket, you realize the person's not there. You're only seeing the physical remains. They have gone. Death has taken too many of my friends and too many of my loved ones. And I know eventually death will take all my friends and all my loved ones and even myself. So here's the scandal. Jesus exhibited power over death, and He gives this power to us as we walk down the path to life beyond death. We do not surrender to death.
Christ's third claim is make or break, true or false. And if it is false, death wins. If it is true, life wins. Here's claim number 3. Christ has power over death. Proof number 3, an empty tomb and over 500 witnesses. Is it really true? Do I have any hope? Yes, 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 yes. Christ expressed His power through healing miracles and raising the dead, and consistently taught that He Himself would rise from the dead. Don't worry, even His disciples didn't believe Him until after the fact. Christ spoke often to the 12 apostles about His resurrection. The Bible states, He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that He must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. Christ, throughout His ministry, was telling His disciples plainly that He would be resurrected 3 days after His crucifixion. Now, from our perspective, these words seem very plain. However, the contemporaries of Christ had no template for the expectation that God would willingly die and then rise from the grave 3 days later. In fact, still grieving and hearts breaking, Mary and several women go to the tomb of Christ on Sunday after the Friday crucifixion, not to see a risen Lord, but to take more complete care of Christ's dead corpse. Mary Magdalene, the former prostitute and now faithful disciple of Christ, sees the empty tomb and immediately thinks someone has moved the body. She turns and sees who she thinks is the gardener and asks, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Suddenly, Mary realizes it is Christ standing in front of her, and her anguish turns to uncontrollable joy. She rushes back to the apostles, proclaiming that she has seen the risen Christ. Their response? You are one crazy lady. Luke describes the scene. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. Peter didn't even realize it as he stood in the empty tomb. Later that day, we find the apostles locked away in a room when Christ appears in front of them. Then they finally believe. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, the religious leaders go to Pilate to request a guard over the tomb because of the very claims of resurrection made by Christ. They understood what the disciples did not. They wanted to make sure none of His disciples stole the body and claimed that Christ had risen from the dead. Obviously, they didn't know how thick-headed the disciples were about this teaching. And when the Roman soldiers reported back to the religious leaders that Christ had left the tomb, no one disputed the tomb was empty, nor the body had not been stolen. In fact, the religious leaders told the Roman guards, when the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, His disciples came during the night and stole Him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." They were not denying the empty tomb. Boom. Christ claimed to be the Son of God and performed miracles to prove it. Christ claimed that he would die so that our sins can be forgiven and we can have a relationship with God, and he did it. Christ claimed he would be resurrected on the third day and did so. The number of eyewitnesses, over 500, and the historical documentation from non-biblical scholars make these events some of the most documented facts of the era. And this is good stuff. Have we found the path that leads to life beyond death? Yes. Let's go back to the great fear we have about death. And let go of your mind for a moment and let your imagination take over. Think about having this conversation with death at the moment you realize your physical time on this earth is ending. Hi, death. You lose, sucker. You can have this physical body because this physical body is just a seed and I don't need it any longer. It's like Paul, my friend, said. So it will be with the resurrection of the dead. The body that is sown is perishable. It is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body and it is raised a spiritual body. Now, death, you do make me anxious because this is the first time I've been down this part of the trail. But let me tell you right now, take your big shot, sucker, because I am confident in Jesus Christ and his resurrection, and I am confident of his love that I will be resurrected. Death is just a transition to a better life, and I'm ready. You lose, sucker.
Not a conversation many people are capable of having with death. Most people want to bargain for a little more time because we want to avoid death at any price. Yet for those who believe the claims of Christ, this is the confidence and courage you can have in facing death. Death is simply a door to our most complete self. It is the door to home, to the presence of Christ, and to the loving arms of God the Father. It is time for you to prepare for your conversation with death. This is one conversation you do not want to have unprepared. Are you ready to face down death and declare that you are on the path that leads to life beyond death? Do you believe these three claims that no one else makes? If you do, you have changed paths and are now walking towards life beyond death. We can choose life instead of death. Peace.